Hello, everybody. Give a couple more people a little bit more time to come streaming in here and start to populate up the live chat. Looks like I got some seawall action up in here already. Looks like I got a couple other lurkers here, but we'll be doing live chat up here tonight, which I don't usually do, but we're just chatting right now, so it's going to be that. So tell a couple friends here. We're going to sit back and we're going to talk about what happened today. So come on in and join on. Give me just a couple more minutes, and I'll give you a couple more minutes to go off and tell a friend. A little bit of Spartacus in here too, my friend. Hello, everybody. How's everybody's night there? Who we got here? We got some Seawall in here. We got some Spart. I guess that's going to be the two that I got watching over on YouTube. And I don't know if I'm going to be talking to an empty room for the majority of the night here, just because of the fact that this is by no means my normal stream time. And even at this point, I know I've got my friend Steve Ignoramus is getting over there. He is streaming over on his network. And, I try not to stream at the same time as everybody else does, but just sometimes with something like this, especially around my work schedule, and I wound up getting out of work late too on top of this. Sometimes you just got to take some time and sit down and, work with the time that you have here. So hopefully we do see a few more people coming in here hanging out, but we got to talk about this conviction. We've got to. Just because it's big news right now. It's definitely something we need to see. We need to talk about, and we got to talk about what's happening next year. I opened this up as a live chat. If you're over on Twitch, this is a just chatting stream because that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about this, and I want to see what you guys have to say about this. But once again, this may very well just be me bloviating into an empty room for an hour because I've got stuff to say about this. I'm sure you guys have stuff to say about this, but I don't know. I'm very afraid right now. I honestly, looking at what happened today, I'm very, very afraid. And I can tell you why I'm afraid, but I know some people come out and say that I'm fear-mongering, I'm panic-mongering, and I might be. And I might be absolutely wrong on this point, but it does look like we're starting to see some of the riots come back up. We're starting to see Minneapolis is starting to go up a little bit. I have been on somewhat of a media blackout for the majority of this. I found out they were doing the announcement, and I haven't really everyone wants to go back and go check on Twitter, but for the most part, I haven't really been doing a whole hell of a lot, and I'm going to freeze up right in the middle of this rant too. So let's see if I can figure out what's going on there, or if I just dropped fucking connection, or what the hell happened. It might be my processor too, because, alright, I'm back up. Yeah, I got disconnected. No, I didn't get disconnected. I stayed on. But I just dropped a bunch of frames. Okay, we're back up and we're going here. Spartacus says, yeah, it's reasonable to be afraid. It is. Right now, it's very reasonable to be a little bit wary. And I'm not even wary about, violence in my neighborhood. Okay, if anybody's worried about me, I'm fine. Where I am, I am 100% fine. Nobody's going to be coming into this building. Now, might I start locking my door at night? That might happen. I live in small town America. I live in a little city of about less than 5,000 people. So for the most part, I look at this and I say, I will be just fine for the most part off of here. But I'm probably going to chamber around. My nightstand handgun usually doesn't have a round chambered. The one in my truck does, but the one in my nightstand doesn't have one chambered under most circumstances. But that might be changing right now. I'm not afraid, though, of somebody coming to try and loot. I'm afraid of what happens next. Now, I looked at the trial of Derek Chauvin for the murder of George Floyd, and I looked at it for what it was. And really, honestly, I was less than surprised to see what happened today happen. I was actually... It was almost expected to me, especially when the first guilty verdict came out, because you knew that the next two were going to be going the same way. And you kind of knew what it was at that point, too, because this stopped being a good faith of the court system going through and actually trying to present a case to put somebody in prison. Now, there's been a lot of argument over what this means and what it is for Derek Chauvin to be on trial. The libertarian community especially, because, the monopoly on violence, the police, they always have to be bad because they're the state and it's the monopoly on violence. No, you guys are individualists, first and foremost, and you believe in the Constitution. And Derek Chauvin was robbed of his constitutional right to a fair trial by a jury of his peers, under a lot of different circumstances. Now, I did actually have some faith in the beginning of this that justice would actually prevail in some of this. I looked at what was happening with this, and I said, there's a chance. Now, and I said from the beginning, I didn't think that murder 2 or murder 3 would be possible. I mean, murder 3 is not even admissible in this case, and yet they still found him guilty because it was the accidental death and the commission of another felony, which at this point, and I don't know how the hell they were able to get this past the courts to do this, but somehow they were actually able to. They managed to come out and make assault 3 a felony, and call this assault 3. So according to most of what I see, and this is going to be based on sentencing, but kind of based on what I saw today, I think that he's going to get the maximum. That's 29 years. 29 years full on total, because it's 12 and a half for murder 2, 12 and a half for murder 3, and then 4 for manslaughter 2. And tell me in what universe, after what we saw today, they don't throw the book at him. Iyama is over here, Iyama Fago. Welcome on in. Thanks for coming in and hanging out. It's a somber day, and it's a somber day to have something just chatting, but we do need to sit down and figure out what's going on here. Silent Caster, how we doing? Why don't I bring the live chat over here so I don't have to look over this far to come back and see you guys? Why don't I do that? How do you get 12 and a half for murder 2? I thought max was 40 years. No, it looks like, according to Minnesota law, it's going to be 12 and a half on murder 2. I looked into it before I checked on it, because I saw somebody over on Instagram posting about it, and I thought it was 40 years too. So I went back and I double checked it before I got live. And yes, it's going to be 12 and a half. Raceland Hunted, I thought you were right. I thought the same thing you did. So, thanks for coming in though, Raceland. Welcome on in. Thanks for hanging out. I don't even know where to come off with this and tell you why this is scary as hell. Because, well, first let's look back at what's happened off this. Now, to see the murder 2 come down, it's going to be, and I knew this was going to be, for all the theatrics that we saw over the last few weeks, the persecution may have just come back out and said, okay, well, watch the video. There you go. Guilty. End of story. because Chauvin does not have a criminal record. The average sentence for second degree is 150 months, about 12 and a half years. The max is 40 if Cahill grants an upward departure, which he's not going to. Anyway, going back on this, the breakdown with Birkenhoff is here as well. Come on in. Yeah, from what I saw off this trial here, basically the persecution, all they had to do was come out and say that, okay, well, just watch the video. And we could have saved a lot of time off this too, because, now that I see what this could have been. Here, watch the video. Here's Maxine Waters saying that your city's going to burn if you do the wrong thing. Enjoy. This sequester thing, I think, is bullshit. And furthermore, I look at this too, and I was actually going to make a dedicated solo video about this when I thought we were going to have a little bit longer in deliberation. I was going to sit down and make a solo video as to what my final takeaways were this. But now that we've actually seen the verdict come down, and I do apologize. I got up at 5 o'clock this morning. I started working on the morning show. I just worked 10 hours, and now I'm back here talking to you guys again. So if I'm a little bit tripping over on my words, that's just because I'm exhausted right now. What I saw from this and where we came off of this was the fact that, first and foremost, look at the situation we're in right now. Now, everybody's guaranteed the right to a speedy trial. That is in the Constitution. But now we're sitting up under COVID times, so now some of this stuff gets to go out the window, mostly because there's a backlog of cases, and you can only fit so many people into a jury room at a time. And for whatever reason, the Hennepin County Courthouse was moving extremely slow on this too. I do suspect that some of this was situational due to the commie fucking coof, and some of this was also based on the fact that I think that they really did want to have this trial after the election because they wanted to stick their finger in the political air and see where the politics of the country were going to go before they tried to have this trial. And I think that played a role in it. I really do. Especially now, given the fact that also, happenstance during the same trial, we have another shooting going on. If the jury didn't know about that, you're lying to yourself if you think the jury didn't know anything about that. And I think one constitutional right was violated from that. And even furthermore off of this, the fact that we waited almost a year to see any preliminary jury selection off of this. Not even a trial off this, but just any sort of preliminary jury selection. I was about to say sequestering, but it was selection. Before we saw any sort of jury selection off this, it was 11 months. You don't think that played a role? And now look at this. Who didn't know about what happened in this trial? Who didn't go into this already having a preconceived notion? I could have called a mistrial just on the fact that they put the guy in a golden casket and they worshipped him. We all knew what happened about this. And I'm not even coming back out and saying that it was, well, obviously we look at Minneapolis and especially the fact that they had to sequester from and select from Hennepin County because those are the people who were eligible to deliberate in that sort of trial based on Minnesota's constitutional judicial system. Hennepin County is a very left-wing place, but everybody knows what happened here. I could call mistrial right there. Nothing to do with what Maxine Waters said, nothing to do with the settlement that the city mysteriously paid out right in the middle of jury selection. But just on the fact that they waited this long and there was so much wall-to-wall news coverage off of this, I would have called that a mistrial right then and there. And then given the fact that also we sat back and they waited until after the city burned down and everybody came back and talked about it. And everybody saw their businesses get burned out. I mean, that poor dude that was a firefighter forever, that went off and had his windows busted out in his sports bar. And he had his dream of owning a sports bar. He had an absolute dream of owning a sports bar as soon as he retired from firefighting. And he put his life on the line every day so he could save up his money and do a sports bar in retirement. And they busted out his window and they looted the place. Then he went back and they cleaned it up. And he was getting ready because he was going to be able to open it back up again. And then they firebombed it and burned it to the fucking ground. That's the kind of information that the jurors were bringing into this. So tell me that was an impartial jury, and I don't believe you. Now, once again, when I looked at everything that the left-wing media was putting out, because if you'll remember over on Contemporary, I didn't read from the Daily Wire or the Blaze or Fox News. I think I did one article on Fox News back in the beginning, back during the prosecution's phase of this. But for the most part, I read from NPR, CNN, and the local affiliates, because I wanted to see what the information was that was being fed and pumped into the minds of the people who were going to get out and protest. And even with what I saw from them, even just reading what was selectively edited from your CNNs, from your MSDNCs, from NPR, from National Progressive Radio, I still didn't see enough to do intent. I didn't see intent for murder 1 and murder 2. Now, I was 50-50 on manslaughter. I thought that could possibly happen. From the beginning, I thought that man 2 could happen. Man 2 could happen. And it was all going to come down to what it was that the medical examiner said, and which medical examiner was admitted. Let's see what you guys are saying, because it looks like we've got some good information. I've got more people in here than I thought I was going to get tonight, so thank you guys. Raceland Hunted. That's kind of a cool name, by the way. Does Raceland mean something? Am I missing something off this? I know what hunted is all about. We talked about what it was going to be for 12.5. Silent Caster says, you think it'll be appealed? It'll probably be appealed. And there are a lot of factors to be appealed off of this, too. I don't know if it'll go back in front of another jury, because I don't know what the appeals... And, I know a little bit of initial on the criminal legal system, but as far as the process goes, I don't know enough about that to know how the appeal is going to work. But, I would definitely look at an appeal. And honestly, I think that it could get overturned on appeal. It really could. But one of the things that's going to be important about whether or not it gets overturned on appeal is whether or not it gets televised. And honestly, given the nature of this case, I think it's almost certain to be televised if it gets appealed. It's going to be wall-to-wall news coverage again, so you can't get any sort of impartial judge or jury off of this. We just know what the media wants you to do. Raceland Hunted says, you don't think the judge will say there's aggravated factors and grant upward departure? Oh, God, no. It was hard enough, and even with everything put in front of it was hard enough for most people to believe that murder 2 got put on in the first place, just because of the lack of intent. So, no, I don't think there's going to be aggravated factor for that. Absolutely not. I'm going to say 29 years off of this, which, I mean, for somebody that's in his 40s already, that's a life sentence anyway. I mean, what are you going to do in 30 years afterwards? And are you going to make it as the libertarians like to say, the dirty cop that he was? What's going to happen to you in prison? Given the people, you're going to be in there with the same people that you busted. And again, one of the highest profile cases out there. And they pump CNN into those places too. So these people know who this guy is. You're going to be able to hear the ocean from this guy's asshole by the time they're done. If he lives outright off of this. And I don't think he's going to live. This guy's going to go into prison for probably 5 years and come back out on a stretcher. Unless he wins his appeal. Spartacus says, I threw my hands up and my lunch at this result. The whole thing anyone screamed was the only relevant evidence. It was the viral video. Well, and that is one of the things to keep in mind with that is, yes, we had the viral video. We saw that, and that's what they brought forward. There was a lot more, and I'm a little bit disappointed, too, in the defense, just from what I've seen off this, because there was a lot more that could have been done if Eric Nelson had been competent, which I don't know that he was. Just looking at some of the defensive stuff and some of the things that came back out. Now, Eric Nelson could have picked apart these prosecution witnesses a lot more. And I don't necessarily know if that actually would have done anything either. Just looking at the hindsight of all this, even if Eric was at the top of his game, if he was number one, like, top level lawyer in the world, I still don't think that he could have been able to pull this one off, given what we knew coming back into this and the preconceived notions that everyone else brought in. I had hoped that people were going to be able to check their prejudices by the door, but I was very sorely mistaken at this point. Galt says, yes, sir. Spartacus says, but if the election is in doubt, the whole idea of seeing where the political winds are blowing is kind of messed up. Right, but they have to see what they can get away with, too. And I do think that carried over into the way the prosecution presented the case. Because remember, what did they do for the first week in the prosecution's case? They didn't present evidence. They didn't present video. Well, they presented the viral video and a little clip of the body cam video. But for the most part, for that first week. In the second week, they actually did put some evidence forward. Some medical examiner reports, both the conflicting ones, use of force experts and whatnot. But for the first week, what did they do? You remember what they did for the first week. Oh, I was there. I watched it happen. I should have stopped it. I watched him take his last breath. I had to call my dispatcher because I knew something was going on. One full solid week of tearful, emotional pleas to the jury to just put this man away forever. That's what the first week was. And honestly, if this had been second-term Trump, I don't think the prosecution could have got away with that. I think they would have actually had to push a much harder case off of this. Because they'd have seen that the country would have looked at this and said, well, that bullshit doesn't work. Facts don't care about your feelings. But one of the big driving factors in the election was the fact that facts do care about your feelings. So, yeah, I actually do think that the political winds were a major... And here's one of the other things that I pointed out. Now, Derek Chauvin didn't have a criminal trial in this. He had a political trial. You know it, and I know it. He had an absolute political trial. And even further off this, it wasn't just Derek Chauvin that was on trial for this. As much as Peter Cahill tries to tell you that it was Derek Chauvin on trial, as much as the prosecution tries to tell you it was just Derek Chauvin on trial, the reaction on social media, as soon as this is over, told me the whole story. Derek Chauvin wasn't on trial. Keith Ellison said it. Derek Chauvin wasn't on trial. The system was on trial. George Zimmerman was on trial. The officer that killed Breonna Taylor was on trial. Michael Brown's killer was on trial. Hell, even at this point, given the fact that she turned herself in, but still they want to get retribution off her, Kim Potter is on trial, or was on trial for this. And you saw it all over the place. Oh, somebody better go beat the shit out of George Zimmerman tonight. Just because. Ha 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 ha. Look at what we had here. This had nothing to do with... Chauvin is the scapegoat. And I mentioned that even too when we looked at and we saw the blue wall of silence was collapsing around Chauvin. I kind of knew where this was going at that point too, because they weren't trying him. They were trying... The police in Minneapolis are covering their own asses. They looked at this and they said, I gotta drop my volume back just here just a bit because I see myself bouncing off the top and I don't like it. No, Derek Chauvin was on trial himself, but he was a stand-in for the entire system. He was. Because now people are digging up all these old cases and looking back and saying, well, see, now we convicted him. Let's go dig this one back up too. And I want to go back for just a second, mention why I'm scared. Because I am scared at this point. I very much am. Spartacus says, right, you should be. Because as of this point, the presumption of innocence is gone. If this played out the way that I think it did, in the way that I actually believe that it did, based on the evidence that was brought forward and the fact that we still got the verdict that we did, then the presumption of innocence is over. You are no longer innocent until proven guilty. You are judged by the mob, and then your trial is a formality. And if the mob believes that it's time for you to go to prison, then they will pressure the judicial system to make sure that the jury gives you the right verdict. I mean, hell, even Biden coming in here. Come on, man. I'm just praying for the right verdict off of this one. Are you kidding me? According to the Constitution, I'm not to be judged by you, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. I am to be judged by a jury of my peers. People who are in the similar or same walk of life as me. Are you fucking kidding me right now? And I look at this right now and I know that I could go to prison for saying Maxine Waters is a fucking cunt. And yes, I'm afraid of that. My biggest fear out of this wasn't what was going to happen in Minneapolis, what was going to happen around the country, what was going to happen to our society. My biggest fear was what was going to happen to the court system off of this. And what this means for the presumption of innocence. I am very afraid right now as to what this could mean going forward and where this could ultimately end. Let's see. Spartacus says, this whole farce shows a need to reform trials of similar levels of publicity and political division. Jurors' identities need to be sealed and protected. That was one of the other things, too. They didn't give names, but they were ready to. They didn't give names, but you knew all kinds of stuff about them, and that wasn't an accident. NPR, even the local affiliates were telling you, okay, this person is a doctor in this area, this is what his demographics are, and this is the kind of area where he lives. You don't think that was fucking doxing to make sure that they gave the right outcome off of this? And once again, I still had the faith. I still had faith, especially given the fact that, DC was getting ready and boarding up, and they denied people's time off. And I have no idea what's happening around the country. Hell, Madison and Milwaukee could be burning in celebration right now. I could go back and look and possibly see that. But I also look at the fact that now they've opened back up the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which was an unconstitutional bill to begin with. And they're starting to do much more legislation off of this. There are going to be more rules that govern your life at this point. And I want to talk a bit about policing too, but let's see what you guys are saying. Spartacus says, from what I'm given to understand, there were 3 prosecutors, 2 of which were not from the state's office, only 1 defense attorney, and they hired someone who argues cases in the Supreme Court to practice. I didn't know that. 80s Kid says, people on Facebook high-fiving each other and celebrating. I told them that all cops should quit because they've been treated like shit for years, and I said to them they wouldn't last a day as a cop. Seawall says it'll all end in a downfall scenario. I'm a little bit worried about that too. Like I say, where I live, I'm fine. So those of you who live in cities, I would suggest getting the fuck out of there as quickly as you can. But where I live, I'm fine. I'm well defended. So physically, I'm fine. It's a small town, and I'm well defended. I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about the rest of us. Seawall says we enter a new era of the police state. I'm a little bit wary about that too, just to go on that prediction, unless we see some sort of major reform coming back out of Congress as well. And I'll explain that in just a second. The only choice we have is to try and become the ones in charge of it, limit the pain. And here's the other thing, the side of this. And I mentioned this in a group chat that I participate in earlier on today. This is going to have a major change on policing. And I'm going to tell you why. And it's not going to be the Justice and Policing Act. And it's not going to be the Breathe Act. It's not going to be any of that that's going to change the way that that policing is done in this country. Here's the reality. And, in various Discord chats, Seawall mentioned the fact that there's going to be some blue flu happening. And there's going to be more than that. Because this sent a message to the people who are going to be the thugs and the people who are going to try and test the system right now, especially if they're black. And I'm not saying that to be racist. I'm saying that to tell you that the court system in Minneapolis, well, maybe just in Minnesota, I don't know if this is going to be the same case all across the country. And a different state's court system might find something different off this. But in Minnesota, I can see a lot of people who are emboldened right now who are going to go back to go out to try to rob, steal, go into the suburbs, perhaps. Go out into these small town communities, these small neighborhoods, bust into homes, take what they want, because the laws aren't going to change. And to be completely honest, the Democrat Party is not going to ease up the foot that they have on the neck of the black community, because they need that permanent underclass to continue to vote for them. They need to continue to tell everybody that it's the Republicans' fault that they're poor, which means they have to keep them poor. It's the Republicans' fault that they're poor, and if you only vote for Democrats one more time, then they're going to go back and fix everything. But now these people, because they're permanently poor and they need to get their food, get their stuff, they're going to go in. They're going to bust into these stores, take what they want. Who's going to go police that in Minnesota? Now, once again, this may be different in any other court system in the country, but who is going to go police that in Minnesota right now? What police officer is going to look at this and say, if I go in there, he might get aggressive with me and I might have to defend myself. And if I defend myself, then I'm going to get charged with murder. Fuck this. I'm not answering that dispatch. Fuck that. I'm not doing that. What officer is going to go in and police this right now? If I had a badge, I wouldn't. If I had a badge, first off, if I had a badge right now, especially if I was in Minnesota, but pretty well anywhere else in the country, if I had followed my dream, the pipe dream that I had when I was still dating my ex, not this past one, the one before, when the Michael Brown thing was going on, I said, I kind of want to volunteer to be a police officer just because they need the help. They need the people who are going to be willing to go into these neighborhoods and go help out. If I had done that, right about now, I would be walking up to my supervisor, handing him my badge and the state-issued gun that I had, and say, fuck this, I'm out. And even if I had stayed on, I'd get that dispatch. I'd get to come over the radio. Yeah, Breaker 19. We've got a breaking and entering over in the local Foot Locker. All units, please respond. I would look at my radio and I would turn the fucking thing off, because I wouldn't want to be anywhere near that. Because once again, the guy charges me, and I pull up, even if I knock him out, I sever his spine accidentally. Even if I don't use a firearm in this, and I just lay one on him as he's running at me, in self-defense, and he severs his spine, I'm going down for murder. I'm not going to go into that. Fuck that. And you're going to see a lot more of that start to come up. I mean, hell, libertarian paradise, no police. Which is fine. I mean, for the most part, people like me, I can defend myself. If every police officer quit tomorrow, I would either be defended and nobody would come into my place, or they'd drag me out in a body bag. In which case I wouldn't have to experience it. Because I would start shooting back and they'd either back away or they'd kill me. One of the two. But now let's see what starts to happen. And I'm almost a little bit afraid of my friend Seawall's fantasy about this as well, because he's looking into this and saying that this is going to cause more policing and more aggressive policing at this point. Because, you know, the progressive America doesn't want police, which I don't know how they plan to enforce their redistribution. Perhaps at some point they're going to find a way to force their redistribution, but usually that happens with police, with guns. Just saying. And libertarians are going to be in paradise because there's no police and there's no agents of the state. But what's going to happen when soccer mom America, middle America, swing voter America looks at this and says, okay, now who's going to defend my home? That's the demographic you need to watch. Swing voter America. Yes, your conservative America, your thin blue liners are just going to come off and say, oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We back the blue and we're going to do the blue. But swing voter America, that's who you need to watch right now. And I know a lot of libertarians, and we saw a lot of them come on my 24-hour stream. And I'm very friendly with a lot of them, but they're not the ones that are going to see this. It's because this is going to be their playground, and we're going to see really quick if their no police system actually works. If this continues the way it's going. But Soccer Mom America isn't going to stand for that shit. And I was even considering for a while running for Rock County Sheriff. I'm not going to do it now, I'll tell you that. But I was considering running for Rock County Sheriff in this upcoming term. On a platform of don't hurt people and don't take their stuff. And I was hoping to actually sit down and have a conversation with Brian Nichols to see if we could figure out how you would sell that to Soccer Mom America, who believes that the only people who should be defending anybody is the state. Because they're the hard sell. Hell, the progressives, hey, less policing? Hey, yeah, absolutely. But those soccer moms, oh, yeah, no. We want to make sure little Jimmy can walk to school safely, 10 miles. I can give him a ride. That kind of stuff. All right, let's see what we've got here. Seawall says, as the establishment policing breaks down, the crime will spread to these suburbs, and these normies will clamor for anyone who will say they will stop the crime. As they're planning on purging the military and police forces, I have a feeling American Freikorps. Is that going to get me shut down on YouTube? Are you spreading Nazi propaganda, Seawall? Freikorps will become a thing sooner than we thought. There's Ron Helton right on cue with exactly what I was just saying with Libertarian Paradise. Good, let them turn their badges in. We need peace officers, not bagmen for the government. Seawall says, hell, if you dodge and he slips and falls and breaks his neck at this point, yeah, absolutely. Anytime a suspect passes away with a certain melanin count in his skin, and a white police officer is involved, that's going to automatically, you're going to have to sit back and wonder if there's going to be murder. Hell, you could be going in for an arrest. I'm honestly afraid, and this might be the furthest extreme at this point, but I mean, it's open season at this point. Because the mob doesn't listen to the facts. They listen to what the mainstream media tells them as the narrative, and they run with it. You could go up and roll up as a police officer on a bank robbery. Let's go to an extreme, as long as we're going to the extreme here. You roll up in your little Ford Explorer on the bank robbery. You come in and say, hey, what's going on in here? And the three black men in there who are robbing the bank, because they happen to be black, even though, actually, I think most bank robbers are white. But just in this pretend scenario right now, all three of them take a cyanide pill as soon as they see you. Did you just murder them? Or are you going to be tried for murdering them? This is the reality we actually have to look at because of the way that the mob has affected this and how the mainstream media has fueled the mob. And there's a lot more to go with this. And I mean, we've been here for 45 minutes at this point. Ron says, yes, I thought seriously about volunteering to be a reserve deputy for the sheriff's department, but after thinking of all the immoral and unconstitutional BS that they enforce, nope, can't do that. Yeah, that's one of the things that I want to do, and that's why I wanted to run for sheriff. And honestly, as a deputy, even still, you still have the discretion of what to enforce and what not to. And to be completely honest, when I was growing up, I knew whose unit number I was safe around and whose unit number I was not. Because I knew a couple deputies that wouldn't enforce the law because they weren't, as Ron says, bagmen. They were out there to legitimately be there if somebody hit a deer, to go process the paperwork to go with that, and to go in if somebody's trying to break into a house. Or somebody gets hurt on something and they need to clear the road for something. They were actually out there to be public safety officers. Not just throw you a speeding ticket because they need to meet their quota. There were a good 3 of them that I knew would do that. I went to church with one of them, and he was the chief deputy for a while. I think he might be sheriff at this point, but I don't know. He was a good guy. And I knew he wouldn't pop me for speeding. He was a legitimately good cop. Seawall says they also probably killed self-defense in Minnesota. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Like, self-defense is not a thing anymore? Well, maybe. We'll see. We'll see what happens when some of these private citizens start getting beat up and attacked. And nobody's going to come to save them. Seawall says, hey, it isn't a fantasy, it's a warning. Yes, see, I do think that it's some German kind of stuff that goes along with this. I don't know. What do you guys think of what happened today? What do you think this means for the country? Especially middle soccer mom America. Now, and once again, I will come out and say that, progressive paradise, no cops. Although, once again, how do you enforce that redistribution if you don't have cops? So progressive paradise, no cops. Libertarian paradise, no cops. But now we've got conservatives and middle America swing voters that depend on having police out there, that look up to the police, that tell little Jimmy and little Sally that the policeman is your friend and you should always respect the policeman. Yeah, that's pretty well what it is. Don't be bitter, Ron. There are good cops out there. Don't be bitter, Ron. I would have been a good cop if I'd run for sheriff and won. Because that would have been it. If I find out that you went after somebody for an expired license plate, or wrote them a ticket for an expired license plate, or speeding, or something else like that, you'll answer to me. Don't hurt people and don't take their stuff. But yeah, they pretty much show after the attack and call for the morgue. Yeah, at that point, if you're getting attacked by somebody, absolutely. Ooh, Ron's mad. Ron Helton is mad. Ron Helton does not like police. I know that. Let's see. What else do we have here? Seawall says, with how far they have forced the Overton window to the left, it may snap back so hard that the elastic snaps and the window is forever stuck in the hard right authoritarian zone. Yeah, that's not going to turn out well either. I hate to tell you because that's revolution territory. That comes into the territory where people start shooting back and they start burning everything else back down. And I get on their side for that. I'm not going to get in the hard right side. I can tell you that right now. If we get into hard right authoritarianism, I will stand next to the balaclava clad Antifa guy and throw the brick right with him. I will sacrifice my life to help prevent the U.S. from getting to that point. That flag says it all right there. If we get into the hard right authoritarian zone, I'm out. I will be the resistance at that point. Ron Helton says, I want them all to quit so the American will wake up and realize the police stop nothing. 80s Kid says, I'll have to be honest. I think the left has won. Evil always wins. See, I don't know, because just looking at the numbers in the government right now, I mean, they're going to start pushing down their... And Sewell is right, and I hate to say that because he's talking authoritarian right-wing fantasy, and that scares the shit out of me. But he is right on the basis of the fact that, and I pointed this out too, soccer mom, people like Ron are going to be fine without police. People like me are going to be fine without police. People like Sewell are going to be fine without police. Mrs. Jones, in her $250,000 upscale suburban house, is not going to vote for somebody else who's going to eliminate the police, especially if things start getting really, really bad around the country. And these people are going to get punished at the ballot box, and they don't have a lot of ground to lose right now. Why do you think that they're trying to force Breyer to retire? So that they can get his replacement jammed through while they still have a seat in the Senate. Their agenda is radical. And even picking off 10 seats in the House and 1 seat in the Senate fucks the agenda they're trying to jam through. Just so you know. Let's see. Sewell says under U.S. law, police are not legally required to protect you, by the way. No, but some of them still do. No, Ron, they do actually prevent crime. Through fear. If criminals are scared of the cops, they're less likely to commit crime. Oh, really? Apparently you didn't see what happened in my city last summer. Well, not my city anymore, thankfully. But my former city, my hometown, last summer. Ron Helton says during the LA riots, the Korean part of town had to defend themselves. The cops turned tail and ran away. Fuck those hoe-ass bitches. I like how he says feck and then says bitches in the ass and bitches in the same sentence. I love you, Ron. I love it when you come in this chat. Even though we sometimes do disagree on stuff, I do love it when you come into this chat. How are the hens, by the way? Sewell says that territory is where they don't want me dead just because I'm a white Christian male. Ron says, seriously, I used to think that having cops was a deterrent as well. It is not. Let everyone arm themselves and defend themselves. Watch crime plummet. An armed society is a polite society. Robert Heinlein. Well, and that's one of the things that actually I should point out off of that. And that's, it was one of the strains out of the last time I was engaged, too. Was the fact that, in the city and in like the Chicago suburbs, these people are deathly afraid of defending themselves. You can't even get them to go into the same room as a gun. My dad got his 410, and I forget what the other chamber was on it, but he's got an over-under that's got a 410, and then I believe it has got a rifled barrel. on the second chamber. I cannot think for me what the hell the other. I'll have to ask him afterwards. But what the other chamber is off of that. But I just popped a couple rounds through the 410 chamber, and my ex was afraid to death about it. Sewell says, what I would prefer is elected sheriffs that are the only real police force in the USA, with support from the local militia if they need extra manpower. Well, and that goes back to what Ron said earlier on too, where he had thought about becoming a reserve deputy because he wanted to help out his community. That would be the local militia helping out, becoming a reserve deputy. And the sheriff can deputize anybody that they want. You don't even have to go through law enforcement training, especially in small communities. I could become a deputy if I knew the sheriff real well and he could trust me. Now, he probably wouldn't pick me up because, he doesn't know me from Adam. I'm not from this county. But I bet you I could get deputized in Buffalo County if it really ever needed be. If it ever got bad, well, I just doxed myself anyway. But in the county I grew up in, absolutely, I bet you I could get deputized because I know everybody who's on the force. In what universe is the economy better under Biden, except for the fact that it's opening up because the states are releasing their stranglehold? The economy is not better under Biden. But we've got the progressives over here. Welcome in. The economy is not better under Biden. Ron Helton says, if fear rules, then crime should have vanished by now. Sewell says, I saw what happened. Cops were ordered to stand down. Yep. It's a risk-reward scenario. I think we're going to start to cut it off at this point here, too. So, you guys get your last-minute messages in. But thanks, guys, for coming and hanging out. Hey, even Chalaga showed up towards the end of the day. Yeah, it was just a little impromptu talk because, I wanted to get some stuff off my chest, too. And actually, I wound up working late, so I didn't even know if I was going to do this, but I thought about it on the drive home. I actually skipped dinner just so I could come in and talk to you guys for a little bit. I might go see if I can still grab something yet tonight. Maybe get a pizza sent here or something. Let's see. Ron says if they don't learn to defend themselves, then they will perish. A person who does not provide for his own is no better than an infidel. We live in a society, Ron. Until that all breaks down, we're still going to have Mrs. Jones and the $250,000 suburban home that says, I need police to keep me safe because I can't do it on my own. Sewell says, you cannot save those who are unwilling to try to save themselves. Ron says, our elected sheriff is a crook. Don't know how he keeps getting elected. Run against him. And I'm dead serious, by the way. Go run against him. If you think you can do better, make a better platform and run against him. And I do have to ask that question. Is there somebody opposing him right now? Or is he running unopposed? Primary his ass if you have to. And I don't know if it's a partisan seat or not either. But yeah, if you think you can do better, go primary his ass. Well, maybe not now. Until we see where policing is going to go in this country, maybe not now. But yeah, if you ever think you can do better than your elected official, or if you think he's a crook, go primary his ass. Dead serious. Sewell says because people don't care about local politics anymore, they've been conned into thinking that federal is all you need. Well, the federal reality show is also a big part of that as well, so keep that in mind. As we look at what's going on here, what's federal, what's state level, and how we got into this point where the federal government has amassed that much power. That's another problem we need to address at this point, is how the federal government has amassed this much power. And why Maxine Waters was even in Minnesota to begin with. She's a California representative. She can't do anything out there except for yell into a mask and make really weird muffled sounds and say, okay, well, we're going to go up and we're going to riot unless we get the right verdict. Chilaga popped in and says Biden economy sucks. It does. Ron Helton says Biden picks up political scabs worse than Trump. Biden is going to start a World War III if he keeps it up. Probably. And that's actually, oddly enough, even if it's not World War III, if it's just another major conflict that the U.S. is involved in on a foreign theater, that might be what unites this country finally. Oddly enough, we are a warlike country. What did George Carlin say? We've been a country for a little over 200 years and we've already had 10 major wars. And that was back at the beginning of the 2000s. It was like, I think, 04. It was his 01 or 04 special, and I don't remember which one it was. Seawall says, I'll be in the Discord if you want to chat more. I want to get some dinner and go the fuck to bed is what I want. And I have to go back down to Janesville, don't I? Yeah, because nothing's going to be open in town here. Shit. Alright, I'll go back to town, I guess. Chilaga says, came in late, family stuff. Well, welcome on in. We'll be back here at regular time in the morning, too. So, I mean, it's cool. And, you know, this was all impromptu. This wasn't planned. And this wasn't on my normal time. I've actually got more of a turnout than I thought I was going to. Just based on the fact that this isn't my normal time. And Steven's going, too. So, Seawall's going to be in the Gen Gap server for anyone who wants to talk. Seawall, why don't you throw an invite in the chat for that? You should be able to do that, and if the Nightbot bumps you or mutes you, I will fix it. I'll watch for it, and if the Nightbot bumps you, I will fix it. So why don't you throw an invitation for the Gen Gap server in the chat for the people who aren't in there. Spartacus will be in there as well. Ron says, well, you could have had homemade meatloaf if I were there today. Yeah, I thought out a lamb steak that I had in the freezer, but then I wound up working until after 8. And then this shit happened, so we had to go talk about it. Ron says, I would have to lock up most of the judges. Chilaga says, are they rioting anyway? I don't know. My mom says Biden looks weak when speaking behind a mask. Come on, man. I can totally talk behind a mask, man. You guys can understand me what I'm talking about with corn pop. Joe, we can't understand you when you don't wear the mask. And Ron Helton brings up a good point, too. What does it matter where Maxine goes? She doesn't even live in the district that she represents. That is true, actually. And I found that out last year as well. Chilaga says, it's fun telling people I'm the most anti-war person you know. Yeah, you're in the right community for that then. And that's where we're going to jump off here, I think. So let's throw some outro music up here and head on out of here for the night. So I can go get prepared so I can be back here at 7:45 tomorrow morning. Alright, but thanks everybody who came by and chatted. And, you know, like I said, I needed to get what I had off my chest. I could blog about it, I could write in a diary, but, you know, I've got this nice microphone and this nice webcam and this nice audience that does come out here and talk with me. And, you know, we got some stuff out, we got some discussion in, and I do feel, well, I still feel scared as shit, but I feel a little bit better now that I had to talk with you guys. So, absolutely, thanks for coming and hanging out. We will be back here tomorrow morning at 7:45 a.m. Central Time. Probably a little bit late because I'm going to be half asleep, but we will be back here either way, 7:45 a.m. Central Time for more Contemporary. So, thanks for hanging out for me tomorrow there as well. We'll see you then. And, yeah, this was fun. We got a lot done. We got a lot talked about. And as always, thank you for coming to my Ed Talk. Take care, you guys.